The UFC has grown from an almost universally reviled, obscure cage fighting promotion to a $4.2 billion outfit in about 25 years. That is less time than it's taken George R.R. Martin to get to the penultimate novel in his A Song of Ice and Fire series. Get on with it, old man. We all know you could be dead soon, and I need to know what's happening to my boy Jon Snow. Anyway, as it ventures out into new territory, reportedly looking to dip its toes into the boxing world, it seems like a perfect time to look at some of the milestones along the way. I know what you're thinking. Who the f*** is that guy? I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture MMA. We're back, and here are 10 days that changed UFC forever. Number 10, February 23rd, 2001. In the early noughties, the UFC was on the brink of collapse. Owners SEG were facing bankruptcy, thanks in part to a backlash against no-holds-barred fighting. The end result was the formation of Zuffa by future UFC president and human thumb Dana White and Station Casino owners Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta. They purchased the UFC in January 2001 for the princely sum of $2 million. Bargain. The first event under Zuffa, UFC 30, came the following month on February 23rd. It saw two title fights. Light heavyweight champ Tito Ortiz managed a slam KO of Evan Tanner in just 30 seconds. Nice! While Kaul Uno and Jens Pulver fought for the 155-pound title. UFC 30 was the start of a new era. Number 9, July 11th, 2015. The UFC's exclusive sponsorship deal with Reebok changed the look of the company and the sponsorship landscape, although not necessarily for the better. Before it, any number of fighters were making as much or more from sponsors like Condom Depot, Mason Funeral Homes, and Dude Wipes than they were from the UFC itself. Soon enough, the UFC decided it wanted to clean up the look of the sport, and that saw it sign an exclusive $70 million uniform deal with Reebok, which went into effect on July 11th, 2015. It saw all other sponsors removed from a fighter's person. They were all Reebok everything. The end result? Low payouts to fighters saw a number of names jump ship. Meanwhile, the Reebok launch went laughably badly. Giblert Melendez, anyone? Number 8, July 1st, 2015. July 2015 was a big month for the UFC. Not only did the promotion's uniform deal with Reebok take effect in all its glory, but it's the same month that its enhanced drug testing program under the US Anti-Doping Agency took flight. As the sport's largest promotion, the UFC was constantly under fire over drug cheats. Once the USADA program launched, the sport would never be the same again, and certain fighters suddenly began to look very different. What a coincidence, Vitor! Names like Frank Mir, Brock Lesnar, John Jones, and Anderson Silva have all found themselves on the outs and under suspension thanks to the program. While USADA may not have cleaned up the sport entirely, it sure is a lot harder for fighters to cheat the system, mostly. Number 7, November 12th, 1993. It's impossible, and possibly illegal, to create a list of days that changed the UFC forever without including the day that started it all. UFC 1 was arguably the birthplace of modern MMA. The tournament, brainchild of Rorion Gracie and Art Davie, was very much designed to spotlight the legendary Brazilian family's jiu-jitsu prowess, and that's exactly what it did. Royce Gracie scored a trio of submission wins, while boxer Art Jimmerson decided that, for some reason, wearing one boxing glove would provide him with an advantage. Turns out, nope! In the end, Gracie won the night, and the UFC was, at least initially, a success, with over 80,000 fans ordering it on pay-per-view. It paved the way for dozens of events to come. Number 6, March 27th, 2007. The UFC has, over the years, made a habit of buying up rivals. If in doubt, Dana buys them out. From Affliction to Strikeforce, the company has acquired every asset it could, almost as though they're trying to create a monopoly, eh? Yet no purchase mattered more than pride. The Japanese combat sports promotion had, for a time, eclipsed the UFC in terms of popularity. It had the awesome-looking trophies and the biggest stars, among them Fedor, Crow Cop, Henderson, Rampage, Vanderlei Silva, the Nogueira brothers. Yeah, you get the idea. When Pride lost a TV deal with Fuji Network over a breach of contract, however, the writing was on the wall. On March 27th, the purchase of Pride by the UFC was announced. The original plan had been to run Pride as its own entity, but that was changed almost immediately. The roster was soon absorbed, something Dana White attributed to difficulty negotiating a TV deal in Japan. I'm just going to leave this tweet here. Number 5, April 9th, 2005. It's considered by many to be the fight that saved the UFC. Back in 2005, the UFC was struggling more than Dada 5000. In a last-ditch effort to salvage their investment, the promotion set up a reality TV series on Spike TV. The Ultimate Fighter would follow hopefuls living together, training, squabbling, exchanging insults, and fighting to earn themselves a UFC contract. And thanks to a thrilling 3-round stand-up war between Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner at the live Ultimate Fighter finale on April 9th, it likely saved the entire promotion. Number 4, November 12th, 2016. There are big nights, and then there's UFC 205, a monumental night that changed the UFC forever. For a number of reasons, before you call me a McGregor nut hugger in the comments section. First and foremost, yes, UFC 205, held on November 12th, was the night the UFC crowned its first simultaneous dual-weight world champion. And consulting my big book of Conor, I believe the term is Champ. When Conor McGregor, then featherweight champion, knocked out Eddie Alvarez, the promotion's lightweight king, it was a historic moment, and also the peak of McGregor mania. It also signaled the UFC was willing to make champion versus champion fights happen, something it had only done once previously. 2 years later in 2018, 2 such fights are a possibility. Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic and Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes. I can't bloody wait. Beyond that, UFC 205 also marked the UFC's debut in New York City. F you, Sheldon Silver. Number 3, July 11th, 2009. When the UFC signed former WWE star Brock Lesnar in 2007, it was a pretty big deal. No one knew just how big, however. The rest is history. Lesnar lost his debut match against Frank Mir, but won his next 4, claiming the UFC Heavyweight Championship along the way. A bout with diverticulitis cut his MMA career short, and he eventually returned to the WWE, only to return to the UFC for a single fight at UFC 200, which definitely wasn't dodgy. Hey, Mark Hunt. UFC 100 back in July 2009 was the pinnacle of the Lesnar era. A rematch between Lesnar and Mir for the title was booked at this milestone event. It turned into the biggest win of Brock's UFC run as he took revenge on Mir, beating him senseless and giving me nightmares. He then cut a memorable promo after the bout, ripping into Bud Light and announcing he was going to get on top of his wife. Lovely. Number 2, February 23rd, 2013. When Dana White was asked in 2011 when women would fight in the UFC, he notoriously answered, never. What a difference just a few years make. While you should probably never trust anything White says, please don't tell him I said that, this was one of the biggest about-faces the UFC president has ever made. After the UFC bought Strikeforce, Ronda Rousey won him over. Finally acquiescing, the UFC booked Rousey to headline UFC 157 on February 23rd, 2013 against Liz Carmouche for the Women's Bantamweight Championship. After an early scare, Rousey locked in her patented armbar and a star was born. Though the sport caught up to her, and boy did it, Rousey paved the way for women in the UFC, changing it forever. Number 1, July 11th, 2016. I can give you plenty of reasons July 11th, 2016 changed the UFC forever. 4.2 billion of them, in fact. When entertainment powerhouse WME purchased the UFC in 2016 for $4.2 billion, it was a game changer. Now in control of the MMA promotion was a company in the business of making stars. The changes were immediate and in some cases drastic. Former fighters promised jobs for life with the promotion, including Chuck Liddell and Matt Hughes, were let go. Wouldn't want to be the guy who has to tell them that. Offices were closed as WME downsized and brought in their own people, looking to squeeze every penny to repay the massive loans required to complete the deal. But with stars Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor on top of the world, the promotion seemed unstoppable. Oh. Rousey lost, retired, and moved to pro wrestling, while McGregor pursued boxing, a family, and Burger King commercials? The sale of the UFC to WME certainly changed the promotion forever, but the jury is still out on whether it was for the better or for worse. And that's our list. Know of any more? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can even follow us on Twitter here. Thanks for watching. I'm Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.